Now time to take a look at the ubiquitous Adobe Camera Raw. And I say ubiquitous because it is loaded as the RAW processor in Lightroom, which millions of people use. It's also installed as the RAW processor for Photoshop, so inevitably you've seen it at least once. If you're not familiar with it, let us take a closer look and show you the strengths and weaknesses of Adobe Camera Raw. And we're in Bridge right now, and all you have to do is double-click on a RAW image, and that automatically opens Adobe Camera Raw, which you see right here. Now, the good news about Adobe Camera Raw is that it's a very easy program to use. There is no steep learning curve like there are on some other software titles, so everything is very intuitive. On the right, you have all your controls. On the top, you have your tools, which there are precious few. On the bottom left, or bottom right rather, you have all of your view options. And I'm going to change this right now to Reflective Pro Photo, which is what I usually use. I had imported some for internet use before, and which is why it was at sRGB. On the left, you have your views. You can zoom in or zoom out however you want. But this is very, very self-explanatory. In the upper right, we have the histogram, and if you'll scroll, if you place the cursor inside the histogram and scroll from left to right, you can see the different sections of luminosity that are represented by a slider down here. So if you want to know how to adjust these deep darks, then it'll tell you right here, where you see down below it says blacks, and then it says shadows, then it says exposure, and then it says highlights, and then the whites. So you can figure out which slider you need to use for each spectrum of the luminosity. You can also click on Auto, and this is so straightforward as to be laughable. We can adjust the exposure, the contrast, highlights if you want to do that, and the clarity slider, which is really, really good. I use the clarity slider as a filter within Photoshop all the time. Vibrance and saturation speak for themselves. If we go to the next one, it's the tone curve, and it's very, very similar to what you see in this section, in this panel right here. It's very similar here in that you can segregate different areas of the luminosity spectrum. The details section contains sharpening and noise reduction. I like having these together, but again, you have to do everything manually. And then we have the Hsl Grayscale section. You can adjust the hue, saturation, and luminance on all of these different colors. And then on the split toning, for those of you who use split toning, it's available to you here. And then we have lens corrections. Again, everything has to be done manually. You have to go find your, in other words, if we click on this, and then we have to go find the camera and lens profiles every time you bring in an image. You can do manual chromatic aberration adjustment. And I kind of like this, but again, the only way to do chromatic aberration adjustment is manually. That's the whole thing about Adobe Camera Raw. Everything you do has to be done manually, which is why I don't like it for multiple images. The dehaze, adding grain as a special effect, vignetting is all done here, calibration of your camera, and then of course we have the presets stored and snapshots. I'm going to be honest with you, I have no idea what this is. Because again, I only use Adobe Camera Raw as a filter within Photoshop. And mainly it's this clarity slider, which really helps me in defining detail on clouds and other things that I want to add that special effect to. But let's go ahead and use Adobe Camera Raw for what most people do, which is to adjust the luminosity and the color within an image. And I'm going to go ahead and grab this highlights slider and begin my adjustments in the next movie.